As we have discussed before, there are a wide variety of ways in which we come by guests. But I do think today is the first time that we've had a guest idea by virtue of them walking by my house. Yeah. And then I just went inside and said to my wife, I was like, Tom Jensen, why have we never had Tom Jensen on the pod?
Yeah.
She was like,
Adam was out changing the flag up in front of the house.
That's right. That's right. I mean,
Every time I walk by her house, I look to see what the flag is.
Tom, you're
just
Adam's
feeding the fire,
demographic.
Tom.
Adam loves people to care what flag he has out there. So.
I'm totally for the Vandy flag to celebrate the win over Alabama. Very good choice of flag.
And not bandwagon. Like we didn't just go out and buy a Vanderbilt flag.
Nope,
we had
it's
had
been
that
up
flag.
before.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's right. So Tom Jensen's with us here today. You probably know Tom Jensen in a variety of ways, all of which we're going to talk about. Chapel Hill's most prolific walker, the most known fan, I think it's fair to say, at Boshemer Stadium.
Yeah, he's the Tar Heels guy.
And
he's the Tar guy.
Right, yeah.
Everybody else is the Heels. He's
guy.
the Tar.
And side note, one of the most prolific people in his field and most well-known in the entire country, oh, by the way. So, Tom, thanks for taking time out from all of that to be here with us.
It's great to be with both of you. Give
people a little snapshot of your real life and then also some of those other things we just talked about so that they can hear it from you rather than us.
Sure. So I'm in my 17th year being the head of Public Policy Polling, which is a national polling company sort of checking up on elections all over the country. That's pretty much what I've done for my entire adult life. And just to give a sense of what that's like at this time of year, in the month of October, we conducted 166 surveys around the country and interviewed almost 100,000 people. So that's sort of my professional life. I have walked at least 10 miles every single day for over 4 years now. Wow. In that period of time, I've walked over 27,000 miles.
Every single day, Tom?
Every single day, including a couple days with pretty bad COVID that I probably really shouldn't have done it those days, but I still did.
Look, you get sick, you just keep going. We appreciate it.
So I think this is the thing I'm most commonly known for around Chapel Hill because I am always reading while I'm walking. Sometimes just reading stuff on my phone, but often reading 500-page hard copy books. So I've had some people come up and tell me the nicknames that their neighborhoods have given me.
People tell me that too, Tom, but I think it's a little different.
I got a lot of nicknames out there.
So apparently the older people in one of the neighborhoods that I walk through refer to me amongst themselves as the reader, which is okay.
That makes sense. That's pretty basic for what we're going with here.
But this second grader came up to me and said that he and all of his friends call me Bookman. And I prefer Bookman because that kind of makes you sound more like a superhero.
Yeah, that's right. Who can solve this crime? Bookman. We got to get Bookman. It's a crime of policy that we need understood, so Bookman is the guy.
And then I have had a pretty close relationship with the UNC baseball program going back definitely to 2006, the first year that we were really good. But to the point of Adam not being bandwagon, I wasn't bandwagon either. The reason I started coming to all the baseball games is that my senior year I had a class called Sports and Society. And I was one of the few non-athletes in that class. And Garrett Gore and Mike Cavassini, who ended up being hallmarks of our Omaha teams from 2006 to 2009, were freshmen in that class. And I just really liked them, so I started coming to their games. And then all of a sudden, we got awesome. And I should tell one footnote story about that class. Tyler Hansbrough, as a freshman, was in that class.
There you go.
And I'm sure all of our fans remember that Tyler scored. Was it 40 on the dot against Georgia
Yes,
Tech?
40
on the dot against Georgia Tech. And I think that game was it was definitely on a weekday night. I think it was at 9 o'clock on a weekday night. I might be misremembering that. But anyway, this was an 8 o'clock class, and Tyler had this class at 8 o'clock the next morning. And I think everybody was sort of wondering, is Tyler going to come to class at 8 o'clock in the morning after scoring 40 points? He was in there at 7:55, and everybody gave him an ovation when he came in. He was very embarrassed about it. But I still, I obviously liked Tyler for the on-court product, but when he showed up 5 minutes early for an 8 a.m. class the morning after dropping 40 on Georgia Tech, I was very impressed by that.
Just how these boys are, Adam. You know that. Okay, a lot to talk about here. Let's start with the polling part. like, what are people's reactions when you guys reach out to them? Because I got to tell you, Tom, I'm tired of getting the text messages and the phone calls at this point in time.
Well, I don't blame you.
So what are people's reactions when you guys try to get their opinion on things?
Well, most people ignore us. I mean, that's a reality of conducting survey research in this day and age, is that the response rates are not very high. Like a generation ago, when people were just getting called on their landlines and they had 3 channels, and we called them during Wheel of Fortune, which was about the only option that they had for evening entertainment, like 30 or 40% of people would answer the polls. Now, I mean, this is going to be a shocking number, but now it's about 1% of the people we contact who actually answer. If you have a landline, we still call you on your landline. That's not a lot of people. We're now doing most of our polling by text. The response is a little bit better on text because people can at least open up the survey and see what they're getting into and if it's something they feel like answering, whereas calling people on their landlines, you're lucky if they even answer the phone. But you do still need to call people on their landlines because there can be some big differences in what people think or not. For instance, in 2016, the polls for the Michigan primary election were saying that Hillary Clinton was going to beat Bernie Sanders by like 30 points. And it's because the polls that were saying that were only calling people on their landlines, and Hillary Clinton was beating Bernie Sanders by 30 points among people on their landlines, but Bernie Sanders was beating Hillary Clinton by like 50 points among people on their cell phones. So that sort of shows how you have to do the mixture of calling people or contacting people in both different ways.
Okay. So if only 1% of people, and that's, I mean, 1% is still a lot of people, obviously. We're talking about a large number of people that you're contacting in general. So how accurate do I think the polls are if only 1% of the people are responding? Does that?
Sure. No, that's a very fair question. Over the last 8 years, there have been 6 years where polls were pretty darn accurate, and there have been 2 years where polls were not very accurate. Now, the problem for the polling industry is that the 2 years where the polls were not very accurate were the 2 presidential years of 2016 and 2020. So I understand people who just look at that and say polling is bunk. But I think that there's been an unusual impact the first 2 times that Donald Trump ran, where it was harder to get a hold of his supporters. And there have been a lot of changes to the polls this year to sort of try to make sure that that doesn't happen again. And I guess we'll get the answer on that soon enough.
How do you try to find a representative 1%? Like, it doesn't matter if it's 1%, if it's a representative 1%, but it does matter a lot if it's an unrepresentative 1%. So how do you figure out, how do you get the representative 1%?
Well, something that we've been very careful about this year because of the poll misses in 2016 and 2020 is we are contacting people regardless of whether they have any history of voting or not. It sort of used to be that the standard whenever you were whenever you're doing a poll for like the presidential race, you would contact people who voted in one of the last 2 presidential races. And doing that caused polls in 16 and 20 to miss out on a lot of sort of first-time voters who Donald Trump really energized and got into the electorate. So that's an example of something that we're doing differently this year to try to make sure that we don't miss those kinds of people. But another thing that is really the core of determining whether polling is accurate or not is that the people who answer polls are not necessarily representative of the population as a whole. Women answer polls a lot more than men. Older people answer polls a lot more than younger people. Highly educated voters answer polls a lot more than less well-educated voters. So really what I'm getting paid for is to be able to take our raw data that we collect that is not as representative as we would like it to be and put together a statistical weighting formula to make the people who we were able to reach and get to answer a poll representative of the overall electorate. And that's sort of what determines whether polls are accurate or not with that 1% response rate.
Good.
I have to imagine that one of the highlights of your job is when you conduct a poll and you see something in the data that no one else sees, and you're like the first one to think, ooh. Do you remember a time in your time of doing this when that occurred, that you uncovered something and thought, oh, this is going to be much bigger than we thought?
Yeah, something that very much comes to mind with that is that in 2010, Ted Kennedy had passed away after a long time as the senator in Massachusetts, so there was a special election to fill his seat. And we found that in Massachusetts, which is a state that tends to vote Democratic by like 30 points, we found that the Republican was leading the special election. And at the exact same time as our poll, the Boston Globe had a poll that said that the Democrat was up by 15. And we ended up being right, and that went a long way towards sort of putting us on the map on a national basis as a polling company that did sometimes see things coming that other ones didn't.
Tom, like if you're trying to get polls on a national level, are you still talking about like county commissioners in Orange County, North Carolina? Are you polling for that? I mean, like obviously you're going to do presidential, you're going to do Senate, things like that. How deep do you get with your polling?
We do poll to very small levels. Actually, one of the most surprising polls that we ever did was, it's been so long since an incumbent mayor in Chapel Hill lost that nobody even knows when the last time was. Or I should say this was the case in 2015. I was reaching out to experts on local history, and nobody could remember when an incumbent mayor of Chapel Hill ever lost. We actually polled the Chapel Hill mayoral race in 2015 and found that year the incumbent who had been in for 3 terms was likely to lose, and that ended up happening. Just a very unusual thing to have happen in this community. So we can poll down to that level, but the most frequent thing that we're polling right now is congressional districts, just because there's so many of those, and we have some major clients working on that. And one thing that's sort of interesting, though, is the extent to which we can sort of get insights about what's going on in the broader electorate, sometimes even from polling places that aren't very competitive. For instance, we recently did a poll in a northeastern state that voted for Joe Biden by 16 points in 2020, and we found that Kamala Harris was only up by 7 points there. And something like that, I think, actually speaks more to the possibility that Donald Trump might win the popular vote this time around than a national poll saying that he's up by 1 point. When you add up enough things like him doing 9 points, doing 9 points better in a state that Harris won by 16 last time, that Biden won by 16 last time around, you can sort of see how Trump might end up winning the popular vote.
As someone who makes a living talking to people, what do you think you understand about just people as a whole than those who don't do what you do?
Something that I think I'm very cognizant of and that helps me in my work is being aware of just how few people actually follow politics very closely. I think a lot of people who work in politics like go home and watch CNN and MSNBC at night for their like recreational time. Politics is my job. It is not my hobby. So I think that I sort of have a better understanding that a lot of stuff that happens over the course of the campaign really doesn't matter. That'll get blown into such a big deal. I think I tend to have a good sense of when something causes a huge fuss. Here's a good example. We're a Democratic polling company. That just means that that's who we work for. We're not skewing the numbers one way or the other. And I actually will say that if I had to bet, I would say that I think Trump's going to win the election. So I'm not just sending out rainbows and flowers for the Democratic side. But there was a day a couple weeks ago that people on my side were just spending all their energy being infuriated that the Washington Post decided not to endorse in the presidential election. That is something that does not matter to anybody who is outside of a very small bubble that follows politics very closely. So I think that is probably the most important thing, is being able to sort of sort through the noise and realize that over the course of the campaign, most of the little things that happen that might seem like such a big deal, especially to the media for like a day or two, end up having very little impact on what ends up happening.
What do you think does matter then? What do you think are things that cause people to lean one way or the other?
So, I mean, I should still be very clear that the election's close. It could go either way. But if Trump does indeed win, I think what it comes down to this year, it's not, people want to say, what was the issue, that sort of thing. I just think that we've seen a lot of evidence, especially during the early voting period around the country, that Republican voters are just a lot more excited about Trump than Democratic voters are about Harris. And I think if Trump does indeed win, I think that was kind of the deciding factor this year, is just something like who was more excited about their candidate. And you go back to an election like 2008 or 2012 when the Democrats won easily, it was because they were a lot more excited about Barack Obama than Republicans were about John McCain or Mitt Romney. Something that's going to be very different to watch for in the North Carolina results this year is that generally during the early voting period, Democrats build up a huge advantage across the state, and then the question on Election Day is just whether Republicans will turn out at a high enough level to make up for that big advantage that Democrats have built up. So generally, 7:35, the early vote comes out in North Carolina. The Democrats are up by like 10 points, and you just see if Republicans won Election Day by enough to make up for that. That didn't happen this year with Democrats building the big early vote advantage. It was actually pretty closely divided between the Democrats and the Republicans. So I don't think you're going to see Democrats with that huge advantage that you tend to see. And I think, A, that speaks to Republicans being excited, wanting to get out and voting earlier than they have in the past. But what we'll have to see is if Democrats actually make up that ground by doing better on Election Day than they've tended to do in the past, or if Republicans still win Election Day by a substantial amount. If early votes more or less tied and Republicans still win Election Day by a substantial amount like they have in the past, then this toss-up race that we've been talking about in North Carolina for months is probably actually going to end up more like Trump winning the state by 4 or 5 points, which there is precedent for. He won North Carolina by 4 points in 2016. That's a big difference in North Carolina this year to watch out for, is the voting patterns.
I'm going to be so annoying tonight watching the elections coverage with my wife. I'm going to be like, okay, it's 7:35. Now here's something to watch for.
Yeah,
this is
right.
what I think based on my observations.
Yeah. Where are we polling early here? That's going to help me know.
What's today like for you? Like, today is Election Day. What does that mean Tom Jensen is doing other than walking 10 miles?
Putting up my Christmas decorations. That really is something that I frequently do on Election Day. There's not a ton to do by the time Election Day actually comes. I always serve as the analyst for WCHL's election night coverage, so that's my main election night duty. And we do sometimes have exit polls to do. We don't do them in person like what you usually think of as an exit poll, but sometimes we have clients who will want us to do a bunch of calls during the day on Election Day to sort of help figure out what impact some particular issue of interest to them ended up happening. But for the most part, it's sort of unusual. But after about Tuesday or Wednesday of the week before the election, there's just not much utility in doing a lot of polling anymore. So I'm very glad that I got to go to the opening basketball game last night. There's definitely nothing to do between 9 and 11 o'clock the night before the election as a pollster other than watch the Tar Heels put up a solid performance. So that is the deal.
All right, one more polling question for me, and then we can talk about something else. How much more, and you were talking about this in an earlier answer where you said, well, we try to, take what we have and then make sure that we're making it representative. How much more nuanced is just the business of polling now than it was 10 years ago, 15 years ago, whatever, 20 years ago, however far back you want to go?
Oh, the amount of adjustment that we have to do to our data to try to make it right basically increases as the response rate lowers. The less people who answer, the less representative the data is, the more work you have to do to try to make sure that it's accurate. I, at least once a week will think, oh, I wish I had been born in 1960 and that I could have been doing this job in the 80s and the 90s when so many more people were responding and that sort of thing. But we do, for the most part, end up coming out pretty well on this. I'll just tell you one last little example. This summer, we were doing a bunch of polling on state house races, Democratic primaries in Delaware. So these elections are things that a couple thousand people are voting in because they're so small. And we were doing a poll for the Delaware Speaker of the House, and I think we got 120 interviews or something like that in her district, even trying as hard as we could to get as many people as we can. And we told her, based on 120, and this is a longtime legislator, Speaker of the House, we said, we really think you might lose based on what we got out of these 120 interviews. And she did. And that just shows the way that you can get useful data even out of a pretty small pool of people sometimes.
When you tell people they're going to lose, do they get really mad?
Well, it is my least favorite part of the job. And I was actually talking to one of my friends last week. I sent him what I wrote to a client about a poll where they were down by like 15 points. And
Which is like a blowout in your world, right?
Yes.
Like you're getting smoked.
And I said, I had a really hard time coming up with anything positive to say about this poll. And he texted me back and he said, well, are you required to come up with something positive to say about every poll? And I said, well, it's not necessarily a pollster rule that you have to come up with something positive to say about every poll, but my human nature is such that
Soften the blow a little bit.
Yes, it's such that I have to try to come up with something nice to say. I'm not just going to be like, here's the poll, you're going to get annihilated.
Don't be making plans to go out of the state house. Don't worry about it.
You're gonna have more free time on your schedule than you think. That's the upside.
All right. How many times in your life have you yelled the word tar?
So I was leading cheers at every Carolina baseball game from 2010 to 2021, basically. So that was 12 years. And let's say that I went to 35 games a year. You're seeing my math skills playing out before your eyes.
I understand why this works now.
So
we're at 420 games now. And I'm in the postseason I do it all the time, but during the regular season, relatively selective. So let's say 6 times a game so we're over 2,500.
Yeah.
So 2,500 tars.
When does it feel? Are you just like you're just sitting there watching the game and you're like, Tom, it's tar time? I mean,
I actually have an extensive methodology in my head for when it's tar time. So I'll tell you some of the examples. If we have a runner on third base and under 2 outs, it's tar time.
Tar time, right? Yeah, it feels like tar time.
If we are late in a game and we're tied or behind and we get any sort of base runner on,
there you go.
It's tar time. And then I also have some specific rules to show respect to the opponent about when it is not tar time.
Classy.
Once we have a 5-run lead, there's no tar time with a 5-run lead unless we're like playing state or something.
Right,
Yeah, that's right.
Then
Pour it on, Tom.
Yes.
I'm with you.
But yeah, I have contemplated writing out the manual
for whoever carries the tar tradition on later
sometime
on.
for exactly when it's tar time. But yes, it is very regimented.
Okay, not to step on anyone's toes, but there's also another person who's like pseudo tar guy, and I don't know who that guy is. But we talked about him during the postseason. I felt like he was trying to usurp your tar time.
No. That is Barry Smith. And Barry is absolutely wonderful. So this is going to sound bizarre, but this is the truth. I am no longer physically able to do the tar thing for a whole season. It is actually extremely physically taxing.
I bet it wears your vocal cords out.
It is. And also, I get up and do a lot of other kind of stuff. It's kind of... It's very physically taxing, especially like when you get to June and it's 95 degrees, that sort of thing. So I lose my voice like much faster than I used to. And sometimes I really, especially as I've gotten older, like mess up my voice from doing that, like won't be able to talk for 2 or 3 days. So Barry is mostly taking up the slack of me not doing that like I used to, and particularly during the regular season. He's been awesome about that for the last 3 years. So I am super appreciative of Barry. People should be very grateful to Barry for doing that.
Okay, you've seen a lot. By the way, what up, Barry?
Yeah, so we're okay with Barry. That's good. That I'm glad to know that.
You've seen a lot of Tar Heel baseball. When you sit down and you're sitting there and you've read your book and you've done your walk and you've called your folks and it's the end of the day, you're like, you know what? I remember this. What are your favorite 2 or 3 that you think back and you're like, these were special moments?
The whole 2013 season for me was just an absolutely amazing run. We really were the best team in the country. Yep. We all know the reality in college baseball is the best team in the country doesn't necessarily win the College World Series, but we were unambiguously the best team in the country. And similar to this great Omaha run that we just had this last season, there were just so many crazy nights. The 18-inning game at the DBAP where we beat Carlos Rodon to set up winning the ACC tournament the next day. The absolute no game will ever surpass for me beating Florida Atlantic at 2:00 in the morning to win the regional that same season, where we had several times fallen behind and had to come back just to keep the game going. And of course, anytime something happens in the middle of the night, that makes it extra wild. And so that is the season that really stands out to me. But I'll tell you about one absurd sort of funny experience I had that season. This is going to sound like a funny grudge, but there's a lot of front-running fan bases in our conference. We all know this. Sure. I don't think there's a bigger group of front-runners than Virginia Tech baseball fans.
I like this. Tom getting a little heated. I like this.
This is like me and the Blue Jay. I love this, Tom. I love it.
So I've been to games at Virginia Tech baseball where they seriously had like 50 fans there when they were bad. There was a game in 2017 where I think we beat them 20-0, and they started out with 50 fans, and maybe by the end of it, most of the players' parents had gone home.
I've seen little Jimmy take a beating before. Go get something to eat.
But when they're good, their fans come and they're nasty. So 2013, Virginia Tech's good. But because they usually haven't been good, you don't even have to have a ticket to come to the game. So the students are like bringing in their coolers full of booze. There's no one even checking their coolers. It's the wild, wild west. So Friday night, we put up, I think, 21 runs. You seeing a theme here with what we do in Blacksburg? I think we put up like 21 runs Friday night. We win the first game of the series. We're, of course, number 1 right now, but they're ranked 2. The Saturday game is super tense, and their fans hate me. They just absolutely hate me. I've had a number of experiences with opposing teams' fans hating me, but this one was really like on another level. The year before at Virginia, one of Virginia's fans was so nasty to me that Tommy Coyle's grandmother, you all remember Tommy Coyle, shook her fist at him and said, "If you don't stop that, I'm going to beat you with my purse." And they're from Philly, so I believe it.
She had rocks in there.
Yeah, that's right.
But anyway, so back to Blacksburg. The students are drunk. They hate me. They're like yelling nasty. I'm not going to repeat it, but yelling really nasty personal stuff at me over the course of the game. There's like no security at all. They're just letting it go on. I'm a statue about that kind of thing. Like if opposing fans are being nasty to me, I don't acknowledge their existence. But it was making some of our players' families like really mad because, I'm there in Blacksburg cheering on their brother, nephew, whatever. So they're kind of defensive of me. So we win the game in the 10th inning. Super, super tense. Finally, one of them comes over and gets up in my face on the way out of the game. And then one of our players' brothers gets involved. And then the police are over here. Nothing got too out of hand, but it could have gotten out of hand. So to the police officer, I'm like, sir, the reason that this is happening is because very inappropriate behavior was allowed to go on for the entire game. He threatens to arrest me.
Look, bro, don't tell me how to do my job.
I just got called horrible names for the whole game, and now I'm getting threatened with arrest. So I got the ACC office involved.
Yeah.
Saturday night after this game.
An email.
I'm like, this is what happened. They don't have any security. They're letting the students be drunk. They're letting the students misbehave. So, okay, so we come back Sunday.
In his mind, Tom's like, you are going to get misrepresented on a poll about a state senator and see what you guys think about that.
So I come back Sunday. First of all, speaking to our front-running Hokie baseball fan base, they didn't come back to the game on Sunday after we beat them Friday and Saturday.
I love the salt.
So the chances of things getting tense on Sunday weren't very good because their fans didn't come back out. We probably had more fans there than they did. But, I'm sitting at the game, and behind me there's this guy in a Virginia hat. And I'm like, why are you coming to the UNC Virginia Tech game wearing a Virginia hat? And it was a very crisp game. I think we won the Sunday game 3-0. It only took like 2 hours and 20 minutes or something like that, which you all know very well is like impossible for a college baseball game.
Especially on a Sunday.
So Virginia hat guy introduces me to himself. And everybody was talking about, why is this guy sitting in our section wearing a Virginia hat? Well, he was an undercover police officer who had been sent to protect me from any further trouble with the Virginia Tech fans. And his way of going incognito had made everybody notice him. So we had a nice chat. I appreciate that they sent me police protection. I'm glad it wasn't necessary. I should back up with this whole thing, and you all know this from the number of games you've gone to. I am never nasty to the opposing team. Like, I made them that mad on Saturday just by, like, chanting Tar Heels and Let's Go Heels and that kind of thing. Nothing nasty towards them. Anyway, it's funny to me now. It was a little traumatic at the time. The next time we went to Virginia Tech for baseball, I didn't go. But then the next time we went to Blacksburg after that was 2015 for football. We won the Coastal Division there. And then I went back for baseball in 2017, and we beat them 20-0. So that's my Virginia Tech story.
Amy Yacola made a call on Saturday nights like, hey, can we get somebody to protect this guy but we don't want anybody to know that it's a police officer.
I need your most sly operative. I need the person who thought it was a great idea to wear the Kamala hat to the Trump rally because he was undercover and didn't want anybody to really take note. Okay. I can't imagine that on the first day you walked 10 miles, you thought, today I will walk 10 miles for the first time in 4 years, and I will do it every day for the next however many years. How did it get started, and why did it get started?
I think that it was something that during COVID, like the start of COVID, when it felt like we just had no control over anything in our lives and we had a lot of free time because we couldn't do anything fun, I was just sort of like, I'm going to walk 10 miles today. And it wasn't that physically taxing. And then I just kind of kept doing it.
How long does that take to walk 10 miles?
It takes about 3.5 to 4 hours, but the good news is that I am very capable of multitasking while walking. I actually do most of my work from my phone, do a lot of the reading, as we talked about. And one funny thing that I did during COVID that combines the UNC baseball and the walking was we were very early in that baseball season. The whole rest of the season got canceled. I was trying to think of a way to keep people feeling connected to the UNC baseball program during a season when we didn't have any games. So I started every day while I was walking the 10 miles, writing a summary of cool things that had happened in UNC baseball history on that particular day. And I started sending them to Coach Fox, just sort of, I guess, as a pick-me-up for all of us. And he was like, oh, we want to publish this on Go Heels. So then all of a sudden, I was committed to doing it every single day.
You're like, I get to share a website with Adam Lucas? I got to up my game, baby.
Well, okay, so here's the funny thing about this. I would be fascinated, Adam, to know, year by year, going back like 10, 15 years or whatever, who has written the most words on Go Heels in a given year. I think that it is Adam Lucas for every year except for 2020.
It's like the Director's Cup. It was like Stanford wins it every year except for that 1 year that the Tar Heels got it.
Because I ended up doing that for 100 days, and I was very thorough because I wanted to make sure that everyone's heroics got included and stuff like that. I remember waxing poetically about Reed Frank and Kyle Datras's ability to intentionally get hit by pitches, a truly underrated art. That was one of the things. Do y'all remember that game against Coastal in 2007? It was 3-3 bases loaded, bottom of the 10th, and Reed just kind of popped out his elbow, and we walked off the game.
Or hit by pitch. Let's go.
So as I was reviewing all this stuff to write these pieces, that was my number one thing I'd forgotten about, was how good Reed Frank and Kyle Datras were at getting hit by pitches. But anyway, did this for 100 days, wrote it all on my phone. I put it all in one Word document when I was done and put it into one of those things that counts pages on the internet and said, okay, What is this? I wrote the equivalent of a 350-page book about UNC baseball on my phone while walking. during the first 3 months of COVID.
How many pairs of shoes do you go through per year?
4. Change shoes once a quarter, basically.
Okay, so it's regimented. You know when it's.
I mean, I change them when they start falling apart, but that's about 3 months.
Have there been any Forrest Gump type situations where people want to follow you, and then one day you just turn around and you're like, I think I'm ready to go home now?
Think I'm done.
I actually do think I'm close to done.
Breaking news, Adam.
Partially because I'm going out to. I'm not going to Maui, but I'm going to our game in Honolulu this month. It's going to be really hard to fly to Honolulu and walk 10 miles in the same day, and then fly back from Honolulu and walk 10 miles in the same day. So I think going out to Honolulu to see the Tar Heels play, we'll see. I might still get my 10 miles. I've done some pretty absurd things to get my 10 miles. One day this summer, I was going up to visit some friends from the Bosch. It's like a very specific subgroup of my friends is friends from the Bosch. I can't even tell you how many places around the country I've gone for the purpose of seeing friends from the Bosch. I was very close with Colin Moran and Brian Moran were brothers who were very good players for us, and I became very close friends with their mom. And I think at one point I figured out that we had gone together to either see her boys play or go to Disney or whatever in like 13 different states in a 3-year period. So anyway, I was going to see some different friends from the Bosch in Maine this year, and I knew I wasn't going to walk 10 miles when I was with them, but I'm not going to like fly to Maine and be like, okay, y'all, peace out. I'm going out to walk 10 miles. So I got up at 1 o'clock in the morning and walked 10 miles through the streets of Chapel Hill between 1 and 5 a.m. and then flew to Maine.
Oh, don't worry. Adam had his eyes on you. He's like, who is that checking on my flag?
Go change the flag.
All right, Tom. Last thing before we let you go, at least for me. Okay, so once this election's over, like when do you reboot and start polling again? Like when does it start again?
It'll be quiet for a couple months, but I'm sure that once we get around to January, people will be start getting ready to think about what they might want to run for in 2026. And also the reality of any presidential election is once the presidential election's over, you end up in a fundamentally different political climate than sort of what had existed before. So let's say that Donald Trump does win the election. That means that for the next couple of years, things are probably going to be pretty good for Democrats. That's just sort of the way things go back and forth. So especially if that is what ends up being the outcome, I think that in January we'll be doing a lot of polls to see if districts are coming into play for Democrats to possibly win in 26 that weren't on the table in 24.
We didn't even really talk about this, but you did go to Carolina. And why do you think Chapel Hill and Carolina is a place that cultivates all these different things that you love, like all the things that you've talked about on here? Why is that possible in a place like Chapel Hill?
Well, it's just a great combination of a good intellectual climate, but also somewhere where people are encouraged to do a lot of interesting things outside the classroom. I actually sort of have a funny story of getting to Carolina. I grew up in Ann Arbor, Michigan, so I don't know how often in our lives we change our minds about a sporting event 9 years after it happened. But I was very devastated by the 1993 national championship game as a 9-year-old in Ann Arbor. And then I came here 9 years later. I'm like, I guess I'm kind of glad UNC won. And UNC basketball had a lot to do with getting me here in a couple different ways. This is probably bad for me to admit, but really what put UNC on my radar is that when I was in 8th grade, Vince Carter and Antoine Jameson were awesome, and I wanted to be part of that. And also, you know, as a liberal political person, certainly was very impressed with Coach Smith. But so that's how Carolina basketball got me interested. I also think Carolina basketball got me in here. This is. I wonder how often this phrase is said on your podcast because it's a very dirty phrase around here.
Well,
but
look, Adam's here, so.
So my standardized test scores were, you know, good, but not like amazing. And I think in general I would not have gotten into Carolina out of state. But I was a senior in high school during the 8 and 20 season, and my theory is that reduced the level of applications, and that's why I was able to get in with my middling test scores. And because I decided to come here during the 8 and 20 season, I got rewarded with a national championship as a junior. So those of us who stayed the course were well rewarded for that.